Got another unboxing video today of a Spyderco exclusive from KnifeCenter. Go ahead and open this up. Bunch of packing peanuts. Here we go. What we got here? Yojimbo II in CPM-CruWear. Yeah, this is KnifeCenter exclusive. Interesting. Okay, so often get a little note like this that explains sort of what the exclusive version is and how it's different from a standard version of a knife in the product line. In this case, it explains that this is exclusive for KnifeCenter. And it says it can be multiple runs, so it's not as limited as a sprint run. And then it goes on to explain about CPM-CruWear and what that steel is like and how it's different from other steels, what its properties are. And then it goes on to explain that the handles are this smooth G10, which is different than the peel ply texture G10 on standard model and the S30V steel on the standard model. But this I haven't seen before. The knife in this box has a high carbon, high performance blade and components that are not rust resistant. It requires proper and diligent maintenance to keep it corrosion free. Whether you use the knife or not, it should be protected from exposure to moisture, skin oils, and acidic fluids. Clean and wipe the entire blade surface regularly with a light coat of oil, silicone, or similar high-quality protective lubricant. Spyderco is not responsible for the development of corrosion or pitting on a high-carbon blade or components. It's interesting. Yeah, I've bought other knives from Spyderco, including some in this same steel, CruWear, but also in M4 and Rex 45, other high-carbon steels that are not rust resistant, and they did not come with a little card like that, so it's interesting. Of course, it's packaged here with a desiccant, which should help to prevent rust. Oh yeah, it's very nice, smooth texture on that G10. Yeah. There we go. The Yojimbo II. So, flicks open pretty good. A little stiff still. Brand new right out of the box. Yeah. A little stiff. It'll break in with just a bit of use. Alright, so this is a Wharncliffe shaped blade. And its intended use is tactical in regular grip or reverse grip. Now, I am not a tactical expert by any means. I've had a little bit of kendo, which is a martial art that is intended to train you for the use of swords, not knives. But even there, I'm far from expert, novice. And I don't anticipate being in any knife fights. In fact, knife fights are extraordinarily rare. So most of you listening to this are probably also not going to have a real world situation where you would need to use a knife tactically. Yes, it does happen. It's extremely uncommon. So realistically, I think the way people are going to end up using a knife like this is more as an everyday tool. And it should work really well for a lot of everyday tasks. I think this is hollow ground. Yeah, it's hollow ground. And it comes to a pretty acute tip. Right? So it's going to pierce into things easily, but you're going to have some consideration, some care not to break that tip off. Now, the ergonomics of this are great. As Spyderco knives often are, it's really comfortable in hand, and it has a few different grip options. You can choke up on it, put a thumb on the back there, put a finger on it for draw cuts, right? And that Wharncliffe shape, of course, is a familiar utility shape, right? Looks kind of like a box cutter. Nowhere near as much blade, not as much cutting edge on a typical box cutter. So this ought to be, even better at things like breaking down cardboard. And it's resharpenable, and of course, CruWear steel is going to hold an edge a lot longer than the razors that you get with box cutter blades for a box cutter knife are going to dull out relatively quickly. I have lots of Wharncliffe style blades. Of course, one of the most popular pocket knives in recent history is a Wharncliffe, and that is the Leek from Ken Onion. Okay, this is a black stonewash treatment, and this is the composite blade, so you can see the little braze weld there where two different materials are joined. In this case, that's the sharpened edge is CPM-D2, and then the spine of the blade is 14C28N. And Kershaw says that the reason for doing this is because it would, the CPM-D2 steel is so premium that it would be more expensive if you did the whole blade in CPM-D2. And so in order to make it more affordable, they've braze welded it to 14C28N. That's silly, because the difference in price between the materials is surely less than the cost of the braze welding. This is an opportunity for them to make a knife that looks really cool. It's a little different, and that people might be willing to spend a little more on. But no, I don't think it's saving them money by not making the entire blade out of CPM-D2. I think they're braze welding it because they can and because it looks cool. And 14C28N is a perfectly fine steel, and it is stainless, whereas D2 is not, right? Anyway, this has a really acute tip. These, this is also hollow ground, and I've seen a lot of leek model knives, the Canonian leek, with broken tips. It's a pretty common outcome. If you pry with this at all, even inadvertently, there's a pretty good chance you'll snap the very end off. And I've got some that have been reshaped. I've seen some that people have reground into like a Tonto profile after breaking the tip off, or it's just shorter. So still usable, but it is, I think, underscoring the sort of inherent weakness in a blade that's got a really acute tip. It's fantastic for piercing until it breaks. These, of course, are assisted, right? They have this, what Kershaw calls speed safe assisted opening, which is designed proprietary to Kershaw, but basically similar in use and operation to a lot of other assisted opening mechanisms, which has kind of fallen out of favor among knife collectors. With well-tuned action, a manual knife is just as fast and easy to operate, and you don't have to worry about putting a safety on. This thing could open in your pocket. Most assisted opening knives won't, but there's a reason they put this safety on here, right? All it needs is a little pressure on that tab, and it's going to try and spring open with pretty good thwack. So that's a concern when carrying a knife like this as well. That the Yojimbo II is manual, opens very quickly and easily on those phosphor bronze washers, but you're not going to have to worry about it opening accidentally with spring force in your pocket. Kershaw has made several knives with worn cliff blade shape. Here's a discontinued one. This is the Kershaw model 1820, which has a really silly name. The model name for this is Needs Work, which is maybe why this model ended up getting discontinued, because who's going to buy a knife that needs work? This one has been laser engraved or something with some little skull and crossbones, and it says Darren Dog on it. I have no idea who Darren is. This is one of a handful of knives that I acquired at the Texas State Surplus Museum, which is where knives surrendered to the TSA in the state of Texas end up. And for $8 or $15, you can usually find some pretty decent knives there. And you can get knives there for $1 or $3. But those are usually sort of no-name, garbage knives, disposable gas station knives. But I think this one was maybe 15. If I remember correctly, this is 14C28N also, which is a steel that was originally developed by Sandvik in Sweden for Kershaw, for pocket knives. And it's intended to be sort of a variation on AEBL, an improvement over that. Some kind of GFN or GRN handle material, pretty solid grip, and it's got that same, look how similar the blade shape is on this. Really very, very similar. It's got the same swoop here. It's a place to put your forefinger or your thumb to choke up. You know, not quite as dramatic of a tip. I think this is probably also hollow ground. A little hard to tell, but I think so. You know, similar ergos. I mean, the Spyderco is definitely nicer in hand. Partly that's because there's more of it, right? This has this little extra bit in the back here, which gives you a place to put that pinky finger, and it makes a big difference. And while that tip is really thin, the spine of the blade is substantial up until you start approaching that tip, and it thins out really dramatically. I think probably we'll end up seeing a lot of these with broken tips eventually. Although the CruWear should help. It's a tough steel. It's tougher than CPM-30V, which is what the standard Yojimbo II is made out of. All right, let's look at a few more Wharncliffes. Looked at 2 Kershaws. There has been a trend for the cleaver style knife over in recent years. This is one of Civivi's. This is, boy, it's got that really shiny reflective Damascus. This is the mini Mastodon, and they make a version of this that's a little bigger, the regular Mastodon, which I think both are discontinued now. But you know, they still have the Bull Mastiff, which is kind of similar shape. Cleaver shape is not quite the same thing as a Wharncliffe shape. I mean, this one, you know, it has a little bit of a swoop on the front end here, so you do get a kind of a piercing point, but nowhere near as acute as the Wharncliffe blade. Some similarities. This is actually going to be a more efficient slicer because it's a full flat ground, right? And I think also, you know, I mean, yeah, you could break that tip off, but you're not going to be piercing as much, and it's also, you know, toward the end of the blade, you still have quite a bit of girth to that spine. So, yeah, not as useful as the Wharncliffe design for piercing, but that modified sheep's foot shape is going to be less fragile, I think. And this runs on washers. The Bull Mastiff runs on. I'm sorry. This runs on. Yeah. This runs on washers. The Bull Mastiff runs on bearings. And it flips fine on washers, which are less susceptible to getting gummed up. I upgraded the pocket clip on this to a titanium one, but otherwise this is how they came. One more Wharncliffe. This is a new design, also an exclusive. This is from Cutlery Shop. This is the CTS XHP Wharncliffe Paramilitary 2. And originally this PM2 came with bright orange handle scales, which I have swapped out for these titanium scales from Flytanium. I am really enjoying this knife. I've had it now for, I don't know, a week or so. I've used it a fair bit. It does get acute toward the tip, but maybe less so than this Yojimbo II. Um, and this is flat ground. It's full flat ground as opposed to hollow ground. Um, and much higher grind, right? I mean, the grind continues all the way from the edge up to the spine, whereas this is more of a saber height uh, grind. Although the blade is so high that it's, it would be a full flat grind. I mean, a full hollow grind, I guess, if the blade were sort of normal normal size, right? So it's got quite a grind on it. But this, if you're looking for a Wharncliffe slicer, this Paramilitary 2 is great from Cutlery Shop, and it would also pierce well. It drops a little bit more as opposed to just being a sharp line. And the ergos, the ergos are a little different because I've swapped the handle scales, but they're still pretty much the same shape, just contoured. And, it's a Paramilitary too. It's a very familiar design for a lot of people. You can choke up using that finger choil, choke back, get a little more reach, right? You can choke up here by putting your finger up into this sort of flat area, but it's not a choil as on the PM2. Be fine for if you were trying to do some fine work. But this knife is very clearly meant to be held back here. It really locks in, and that's one of the reasons that this smooth G10 is not really an issue. It doesn't make the knife slippery at all because there's a little jimping here, right? But also just the finger grooves, the contours on this thing are going to make it a very secure grip in forward or reverse grip. Okay, so we've compared it with some other Wharncliffes. Let's compare it with some other tactical blades. Again, I'm not a ninja. I don't have tactical knife fighting expertise, but I do have some other knives that are tactically oriented in their design. So let's look at a few. This is designed by Williams. It's the Hisatsu folder for CKRT. Also a very stabby knife, right? This was an assisted opening knife, but I have de-assisted it, and it opens just fine without that spring mechanism, and I prefer it as a manual knife. And that was easy to do. Thank you, CKRT, for making that a simple process that wouldn't make the knife unusable or dangerous. This opens with thumb disc, right? Which, you see that on some tactical designs. And Robert Terzuola has thumb discs on many of his knives. Sort of a modified, or well, yeah, almost traditional Tonto blade shape, right? Compound grind. The steel on this is nothing special. It's like 8CR or something like that. But for stabbing, that's fine. It doesn't really need to hold an edge if the point of it isn't to cut boxes and rope all day. If it's just for having a last ditch weapon, doesn't really matter what steel it is as long as it's pointy. This has got also some kind of orange peel texture, nylon based handle scales, which is fine, and it's substantial, right? I mean, it's a little longer in the blade than this Yojimbo. Another tactical style you might see is the hawkbill shape, like you get here on this Spyderco Harpy, right? Not really so much for stabbing as for slashing, right? Eviscerating or just really wounding somebody with a slashing cut. That's gruesome. And again, I don't think it's likely to really ever be a situation I would run into, especially since I don't carry this knife. It's just part of the collection. That's from Seki City, Japan, and it's just VG10 steel, which is fine. Lockback design. Okay. And one more tactical knife design. Here we have the Mastodon. This is the CrewWear sprint run that just came out and sold out in like a day. I have this in both the serrated edge and the plain edge. And this is also saber ground. It's flat ground, not hollow ground, but you know, it's also sort of intended for piercing, right? I mean, that's the idea with this blade that's canted, this negative blade angle, is that when you hold it in your hand, you know, with the bones of your forearm sort of in line with the axis of the blade, you can do a pretty powerful thrusting motion with it. You know, Masad Ayub, the designer, is a law enforcement guy, and you know, this is the design intended for self-defense. Similar philosophy of use as the Yojimbo II there, but quite a different look, quite a different design. And as I said, I'm not really qualified to evaluate the effectiveness of any of these things. But as a utility knife, as an everyday carry, I think the Yojimbo II is going to be more useful for most people, for most applications. Although this is unique. It's an interesting design look. And these are both made with the same, you know, steel from Crucible. This one is made in Japan. This one, or yeah, I think Japan, right? Yeah, Seki City, Japan. Whereas the Yojimbo II is made in Colorado. Let's do a little better job opening it than that. There we go. All right, so this is not really a review, it's just an unboxing and a look and quick comparison with some other designs. But there you have it. That's the Spyderco Yojimbo II KnifeCenter exclusive in CPM-CruWear and Smooth G10, which feels pretty good. Given the choice between these two exclusives, Spyderco Warncliffs, I would probably prefer the Cutlery Shop as an everyday carry, because the full flat grind is going to be more efficient for slicing tasks, and the CTS XHP is a stainless steel, so it doesn't require as much care to prevent rust or corrosion stains on the blade. But I think either one of these would be a good, you know, work knife. All right, there's your look. Thanks.